You know that old proverb, the one you see on like every inspirational Instagram post?
I think I know the one you mean.
When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It sounds so, well, profound. It has this mystical vibe, like the universe is just waiting for you.
Right.
But if I'm being honest, I think most of us use that saying as a permission slip to procrastinate.
That is a cynical way to start the day. But I see where you're going. You mean we treat readiness as a waiting game.
Exactly. We sit there thinking, okay, I'm not ready yet. I don't feel confident enough to start the business, or I'm not wise enough to have that hard conversation.
We're waiting for some Gandalf figure to show up and tell us it's time.
Yes. And until then, we just stay on the couch.
It's the great trap, isn't it? We confuse readiness with a feeling. We think it's supposed to feel like calm or competence or, having all your ducks in a row.
But that's not what we're seeing in the sources today.
Not at all. We are looking at a stack of sources, articles, historical notes, some philosophy that just completely flips that idea on its head.
We're calling this deep dive the architecture of readiness.
And the consensus here is pretty aggressive. Readiness isn't a feeling, it's an action.
And it's a lot grittier than just waiting for wisdom to fall from the sky.
Much grittier.
Yeah.
I mean, the core paradox we need to unpack is this. We don't act because we are ready. We become ready because we act.
And that teacher that appears, it's not always a wise sage.
No. Often the teacher is a crisis.
Yeah.
Or a massive failure. Or an obstacle that just knocks the wind right out of you.
And the only way to survive that teacher is to have some kind of structure already in place. Now, I have to address the elephant in the room.
Go on.
I'm looking at the Sorks list for today, and it is, well, it's eclectic. We've got the author of Eat, Pray, Love, Teddy Roosevelt, a story from the 1950s South.
A wide range.
But the very first item is the Ten Commandments.
It's a bold starting point.
It's a confusing starting point. We're
Okay.
talking about creativity, leadership, mental resilience. Why are we kicking off with ancient religious laws? I mean, if I'm a tech entrepreneur, how does honor thy father and mother help me get ready for a product launch?
I get that reaction, I really do. But let's strip away the theology for a second and look at it like systems engineering.
Okay.
You can't build a skyscraper on a swamp. You need bedrock. The source material argues that these commandments, don't kill, don't steal, don't covet, they aren't just arbitrary rules for being good.
So what are they?
They're a moral architecture.
Hmm.
They provide structural integrity to your site.
Structural integrity. How so?
Think about it. You're trying to launch that startup. Write that book. That's the skyscraper. But if your personal foundation is a swamp, if you're lying to your partners or you're consumed by envy of your competitors, which is just coveting.
Or your family life is a mess.
Exactly. What happens when the real pressure hits?
The building cracks.
It collapses. The swamp shifts under your feet. This source is arguing that readiness starts with basic risk management. You can't be ready for high-level challenges if you're liable to be taken down by low-level character flaws.
So you need a line you won't cross, values that don't change with the weather.
That's the bedrock. So it's not about being a saint, it's about being stable. You don't decide your values in the heat of the moment. You have to bring them with you.
Right, you bring them with you.
And speaking of structures, there's another religious reference here that works more like a psychological map, the rosary.
Yeah, I saw that. It lists these mysteries: joyful, luminous, sorrowful, and glorious. Again, if you're not religious, you might just glaze over this.
But there's a hugely practical application here. Forget the prayer aspect for a moment and just look at those 4 words as a framework for reality.
Joyful, luminous, sorrowful, glorious.
Most of us are only ready for the joyful and the glorious parts. We want the win, the promotion, the high. But this framework suggests that a complete life, a ready life, includes the sorrowful. It cycles through it.
That's a really good point. I mean, so much of our culture is about toxic positivity, good vibes only.
Right. But this is saying, no, the sorrow is coming.
The sorrow is inevitable.
And if your readiness depends on everything going right, you aren't ready. You're just fragile. The sorrowful mysteries are a reminder that suffering is part of the curriculum. You have to be able to integrate loss just as much as the win.
It reminds me of that John Wooden quote in the notes: be at your best when it matters, and it matters every day.
That's the synthesis.
Huh.
We think we prepare for the crisis during the crisis. But Wooden and the 10 Commandments and this rosary metaphor, they're all saying no.
You do it before.
You prepare by living these foundations on a random Tuesday. You build the moral architecture when things are calm, so it holds up when things get stormy.
Okay, so let's say we've got the foundation. We stop lying, we accept that sorrow happens, but a strong foundation doesn't mean you feel good about what you have to do, which brings us to Elizabeth Gilbert.
The author of Eat, Pray, Love.
Right, a huge success story, but the source focuses on a specific moment where she is deep in the trenches writing that book. She calls it the pit of despair.
Which is where most creative projects go to die.
She's struggling, the words aren't coming, she feels like a total fraud. She is definitely not feeling ready. But instead of waiting for inspiration, she does something kind of bizarre.
She starts talking to an empty room.
Yeah, she starts talking to the empty corner of her room. She literally addresses this thing, the spirit of inspiration, and says, listen, you and I both know that if this book isn't brilliant, that is not entirely my fault, right?
I love this. She cuts a deal with it. She's separating the outcome from the effort.
Exactly. She says, I am putting everything I have into this. If you want it to be better, you've got to show up and do your part. But if you don't, I'm going to keep writing anyway because that's my job.
And then she says that final line.
I would please like the record to reflect today that I showed up for my part of the job.
That is the teacher in the pit. Notice what happened there. She wasn't ready in terms of confidence. She was miserable. But she made herself ready by showing up.
She defined her job as just the work itself.
Her job is to work. The brilliance, that's not up to her.
It's like she hacked the system. She stopped waiting for the muse to make her feel good and just clocked in like a bricklayer.
And that connects perfectly to the Mark Twain quote in our sources. The secret to getting ahead is getting started.
Motion, not motivation.
Exactly. We think we need motivation to get into motion, but usually it's the other way around. The motion creates the motivation. Gilbert started writing to become ready. She didn't wait to be ready to write.
Okay, but there's a catch. Gilbert shows us how to get started. But what happens when you do the work, you put it out there, and the world punches back? Or your boss screams at you? The sources also mention this Ecclesiastes quote.
About the angry boss.
Right.
If your boss is angry with you, don't quit. A quiet spirit can overcome even great mistakes.
A quiet spirit. That sounds a bit passive, doesn't it? Like you're just supposed to take the abuse.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the alternative. If your boss yells, what's the natural reaction?
You get defensive, you yell back, you go cry in the bathroom.
That's a loud spirit. That is the ego screaming, I am hurt. A quiet spirit is non-reactivity. It means you aren't defensive or defeated. You just continue the work.
It's that internal stability again.
It is. If your readiness depends on your boss being happy, you're on shaky ground. But if your readiness comes from your own commitment to the work like Gilbert's, then an angry boss is just noise. It's just data.
And this idea of continuing despite the noise, that leads us right into the next section, the arena.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to do anything that matters, you're going to get criticized. There's that Aristotle line. There's only one way to avoid criticism. Do nothing, say nothing, and be nothing.
Which is a pretty bleak way to exist, but it's safe. And our brains love safety.
But then we get the antidote, which is, maybe the most famous quote on resilience ever. Theodore Roosevelt's The Man in the Arena.
It's powerful.
It is, and every time I read it, I picture the face he describes marred by dust and sweat and blood.
It's visceral. And the key distinction Roosevelt makes is about where the credit belongs. It belongs to the person who is actually striving, the one who errs and comes up short again and again.
Not the critic.
It does not belong to the cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
That phrase, cold and timid souls, is just haunting. It's like, sure, you didn't fail, but you didn't live.
You didn't live. And this connects right back to where the teacher. In the arena, the teacher looks like failure. The teacher looks like an obstacle. Marcus Aurelius is quoted in our notes saying,
The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way.
That's the one.
That's a bit of a brain twister. What stands in the way becomes the way.
It just means that the obstacle isn't blocking the path. The obstacle is the path. Dealing with the failure, navigating the criticism, that is the curriculum.
So the teacher is the struggle itself.
It is. If you're waiting for a smooth path to start walking, you aren't ready. You're just a tourist in your own life.
And John Wooden pops up again here. The best competition I have is against myself to become better. It feels like if you're focused on beating someone else, you're vulnerable. But if you're focused on your own dust and sweat and blood...
You're unbreakable because you are defining the terms of success, just like Gilbert defined her success as showing up, not writing a bestseller.
Okay, so we've covered the internal foundation, the work ethic, and resilience. But there's another layer to readiness in this stack, and I think it's the heaviest one.
I agree.
It's not about work or art, it's about love. And not the Hallmark card version.
No, this is love as solidarity.
We have this story about a man named Buck Murphy. It's the late 1950s, Whiteville, Tennessee, the segregated South. This is not a theoretical exercise. This is a dangerous time and place.
So set the scene for us.
Buck is walking down the street. A white man stops him. Now, for context, Buck's son, Curtis, had been arrested for participating in the Nashville sit-ins, the civil rights movement.
So the tension here is incredibly high. This isn't just a casual conversation. There's a real threat of violence.
A huge threat. And the man bullies Buck. He starts taunting him about his jailbird son, asking if he's still locked up. And you can just imagine the fear Buck must have felt.
The smart thing to do, the safe thing, would be to apologize, look down.
Right, distance himself from his son's trouble just to keep the peace.
That would be the instinct for self-preservation.
But he doesn't do that. He looks the man in the eye and says 5 words. He says, "Wherever he is, I am too."
Wow. Wherever he is, I am too.
It just stops me in my tracks every time. He didn't mean he was physically in the jail cell. He meant something so much deeper.
That is absolute solidarity. In that moment, Buck Murphy wasn't calculating the risk. He was stating a fact of his existence. He was defining love as absolute presence.
The sources call love the highest of all virtues, but specifically as action.
It wasn't a feeling. It was a stance. His readiness didn't come from a clever comeback he'd practiced. It came from integrity. He didn't have to think about what to say because he knew where he stood.
He stood with his son.
And the notes make this really interesting point. People who love are happy. And in this context, happiness doesn't mean smiling and laughing. Buck Murphy wasn't having a good time on that street corner.
No, but he was aligned.
He was aligned. There's a deep, resonant happiness that comes from knowing you stood firm when it mattered. He showed that true support isn't just cheering from the bleachers when your kid scores a goal.
It's standing in the line of fire with them when they make choices that scare you.
That's it. Where they are, you must be too. Even if you're scared, even if you doubt their choices. That is a form of readiness that requires just serious courage.
And again, it's the pattern. Buck didn't wait to feel brave. His love compelled the action, and the action was the bravery.
So we've gone from the dust of the arena to the tension of a Tennessee street.
That was heavy. So I want to shift gears slightly to a quieter form of readiness to wrap this up. There's a story in here about a traveler and a master on a day of silence.
A classic Zen teaching story.
It is. So this traveler is desperate for wisdom. He finds a master who's under a vow of silence. The traveler begs for a teaching. So the master writes 1 word on a piece of paper: awareness.
Which is probably not what the traveler's learning.
Not at all. He's like, okay, that's nice. Can you give me a little more? I traveled a long way. So the master writes it again. Awareness, awareness, awareness.
The traveler must be getting frustrated now.
He is. He asks what it means. And finally, the master writes, awareness, awareness, awareness means awareness.
It's funny, but it exposes the flaw in how we seek readiness. The student wasn't ready because he wanted information. He wanted a definition, a lecture. But the master was offering him a practice.
Like, stop analyzing the word and just be aware.
Exactly. Wisdom isn't something you get and put in your pocket like a souvenir. It's a state you inhabit. And the notes link this to a quote from a Coach Ortiz.
You are not one pebble on the mountain. You are the mountain in one pebble.
Right.
That sounds poetic, but let's double-click on that. What does it actually mean for us?
Well, we often feel small, right? Like we're just one little pebble of experience, and we're waiting to accumulate enough pebbles to become the mountain.
We're waiting to be bigger, wiser, stronger.
Once I have X, then I'll be ready. But this quote says the opposite. It says everything you need is already here, in this moment, in this pebble of experience. The whole mountain is contained in the now. You don't need to add anything to yourself to be ready.
So stop waiting to be a better version of yourself.
Precisely. Miguel Ruiz is quoted here too. Once you forgive yourself, self-acceptance begins. We waste so much energy rejecting who we are right now, thinking we need to be someone else to be ready. But readiness requires accepting that this version of you,
the one listening to this right now,
flawed and imperfect, is enough to start.
It's the ultimate removal of excuses. You don't need to be more spiritual to practice awareness. You just do it. You don't need to be braver to act like Buck Murphy. You just act.
And that brings us to the final synthesis of all these sources. There's this phrase repeated in the text, each one teach one.
Yeah, I've heard that before. It usually means I learn something, then I pass it on to you.
But look at how it plays out in these stories.
Yeah.
It's circular. Elizabeth Gilbert taught herself by speaking to the corner of the room.
Buck Murphy taught the bully, but he also taught his son, and he's teaching us right now.
The master taught the student, but the student's confusion allowed the master to clarify the teaching. We are all students and teachers simultaneously. Always.
So you don't wait until you are the expert to help someone else.
You teach by struggling honestly. You teach by showing up. The person next to you in the arena is watching you. Your kids are watching you. You are teaching them what readiness looks like, not by being perfect, but by handling your imperfections with that quiet spirit.
That is a powerful way to look at it. Okay, let's try to summarize this architecture of readiness.
Let's do it. First, you build a foundation. That moral architecture. Stop the little corruptions that make you weak.
Then you reframe the work. You show up before you feel inspired, like Gilbert. You just do the job.
Motion over motivation. Then, resilience. You accept the quiet spirit. You realize the obstacle is the teacher.
You stand firm in love, like Buck Murphy. Wherever he is, I am too.
Love is action.
And finally, you practice awareness right now. You realize you are the mountain in the pebble. You stop waiting to become someone else.
That's it.
So going back to where we started, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. It feels like we've totally dismantled the traditional meaning of that proverb.
We have. The traditional view is linear. I get ready, then the teacher comes. But this deep dive reveals that readiness and teaching are simultaneous. You become ready by engaging with the challenge.
The teacher is the challenge itself, so the teacher is essentially already here.
Always. The teacher might be that hesitation you feel right now about starting a project. It might be a difficult colleague. It might be a moment of doubt. The teacher is standing right in front of you.
That is both terrifying and liberating, because it means the waiting game is over. So here is the challenge for you listening right now. Identify the one thing you are avoiding because you don't feel ready. The conversation, the project, the apology. Do it today, not tomorrow. Today, and see if the teacher appears, because if you wait for the feeling, you'll be waiting forever.
The teacher's already in the room.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you in the arena.